Hi, everybody, and thanks for joining my talk, my lightning talk. After this lunch, hopefully it will be fine and you will not too tired or full. In today, next 15 minutes, I would like to talk about how we can build reusable UI components in any framework and use them in any other framework. I'm Hadar Geva, CTO and co-founder of myop.dev. And in myop, we are actually building an infrastructure for front-end developers and doing what I'm going to present here and much more. But let's dive just right into the topic. So who haven't faced the issue of, you have one application written in specific framework, but then you either need to migrate to a new one, or you have a legacy in your company. And now you ended up in a situation where you need to rewrite those components again and again, or maintain those components again and again. New version of React came out. We just bought a company that we used Angular, or we have a legacy that was written in PHP or whatever, right? And then we ended up looking in the internet and finding this kind of weird open source bridges, bridge between React and Svelte, bridge between Angular and Vue, and they're not maintainable. They are not performant. They will break in the next version that we will need to update. And the worst thing is that if we are willing to create those components for others to use, they will need to do this work for using us. If we are the one that's writing reusable components, we want it to be as easy as possible for our users, right? To consume and use and to be smooth as possible. If we dig a bit more on the internet looking for a solution for that, we will face a library called Lit, Simple Fast Web Components. When we dip a bit into the documentation of them, they are mentioned that Lit components can run with any framework or none at all. Sounds really good, sounds what we are looking for, but there is a catch. If we are talking about another framework, we are talking about another framework, right? We will need to rewrite our component again in Lit syntax, which, as you can see here, is one of the worst syntax than other frameworks, right? It's not JSX, it's not template, it's something between, starting with this weird decorator HTML, and it's kind of a string concatenation. But we don't really want to rewrite the components from scratch. We want to reuse and create the components and reuse the components that we already have, right? And then the solution that got relevant in the past few years is actually using web components almost natively. And I want in this next 10 minutes to explain how easy it is and how powerful this approach can be. So web component is a suite of different technology allowing to create reusable custom elements with the functionality encapsulated inside. Sounds amazing, right? I just want to mention, on the timeline, that the V1 that standardized into the browser was announced and start releasing into the different browser only at 2016 to 2018. And the framework that we want our user to be conduct our components are just recently, and really, really recently, React 19, Angular 16, Vue 3.2, just in the past, React 19 is the last year. Vue 3.2 is last year. Just now, they fully support web component, which make it really easy to adopt it and to use it as I'm suggesting. So let's take a look about what already baked into web component. So custom element, the ability to actually define a new tag names, right? We all know div, we know h1, h2, ul, li, but as we're using in React or Angular, we want to define a new custom tag elements, right? User pop-up, sidebar, top bar, things like that, right? Shadow DOM, we're not gonna get into in too much details, but the idea is that we can create the components with an isolated DOM inside of them, which help us a lot by isolating the context of our application, like the JavaScript context, and more important, the styling context. So if, for example, we're going to be hosted in an application where all the divs are background in red, we're not necessarily want it, right? Because if we are delivering design system component, right, or a component that should act and behave in some way, we want to control what we're getting from the host application and what not. And the Shadow DOM is the ability that there's for that. And the third element is HTML templating, which is really, really the point that we don't want to use. HTML templating is just dealing with strings, just like we saw in Lit. So the native web components is great in custom elements and the Shadow DOM, but in order to actually render and interact with the DOM, we need to string concatenation, which is not what we wanted. So the idea, and we're gonna see in a moment how easy it is to connect our existing component or our existing frameworks, React, Vue, Angular, Svelte, or any other, and expose them as a web component. So get the benefits of bullets 1 and 2, but use templating of the framework that we like and know. All right? So let's see a quick demo and understand how easy it is nowadays. And again, I already mentioned that the support for it really came out lately. It's not something that you can achieve like 2 years ago, 3 years ago so easily. All right? So what I did here, I created a simple Vite React application. All right? Just Vite start, Vite create, and I created 2 components. A video player, which get a SRC of the video that I want to play, the height, the width, and some callbacks for on play and on pause, right? And let's npm run dev this application. Pretty simple, right? We got a React application with a video player. We can play, we can stop. A pretty simple component, pretty straightforward if you are working in React, right? I did the same with another component, a like button, right? So a like button component, which is getting the like count for whatever database or state management, is the initial liked true or false, and on like change. So a callback that I can store the data or manipulate the database or whatever I want. Pretty straightforward. Again, when we're writing React inside React, right? Now let's see how easy it is to take these components, wrap them, isolate them totally, and use it in any other framework, all right? So I went and created another folder here. Sorry, the font, I think it's too small, but I will open the file and you see. And created like a TSX file. I called it define video player. And in define video player, I did only one specific thing. I register for observe attributes. So actually saying remapped between the web component attribute that I want to listen to into a props that I later gonna pass into the React component, right? This is the only specific thing that I did in order to support a specific component. All the rest, like 50 lines of code, are the same 50 lines of code that I will use for any other components. I actually reuse them between the like button and the video player, because what they are doing is they are just bridging the gap between React APIs and web component APIs. If you later want to do the same with Vue, you need another 20 lines of code to close the gap between Vue and web component, which now I show you in React. It's super simple. I just imported a create root from React DOM, all right? React DOM client. I get the create root. Then I put in it, web component is a class object, so I put it on this root, create object, and then every time that render function is called, I'm just doing this.root render video player, the pre-created component, the pre-created React component, passing it the specific props that I already mapped in attribute observe, right? So all these 50 lines of code are copy-paste between components. You just need to define which element you want to listen to. And this also can be automatically. In a moment, I will show how. Once we created this component, we need to define like the custom element tag name. I call it video player, all right? And that's it, I'm done. I have a web component defined as video player, which under the hood use React component for the rendering mechanism. So let's see it in action. I'm now going to a simple HTML file, right? A simple HTML file without any framework in it. It can be a PHP, it can be jQuery, it can be whatever application you want, right? And I'm just rendering a video player, right? Without importing anything, without bundling anything, I'm just loading the bundle that you saw with define like button and define a video player and just use it, all right? So let's go to this website and see. So this is the website. It's a website without React. Ignore those a few elements before. It's related to a bigger explanation, to a bigger example. But as you can see, I have here the video player, and I have here the like button. Looks exactly the same, rendered by React, with the styling inline within them, totally isolated for the styles or JavaScript context happening in my application. More than that, if I'm opening the console, right, I can register and pass functions and complex objects into the components, something that just recently was not supported. Because if you think about it, HTML attributes, as they are, as HTML is an XML, are non-serializable. So up until recently, I can pass like string, booleans, and numbers, but cannot pass object or functions. And as you can see, React and the other frameworks closed this gap, and Web Component already supported it, right? So as you can see, the prop, which is a function, non-serializable function, I can now use it here and get and control notification and functions or complex objects from a native application into React. We're running out of time, so I will back to the presentation. I will just show one more thing on screen before that. If, for example, we want to use the same component that we just saw in a Vue application, just the same, video player inside the template of Vue. So now, without import anything, without understanding or without knowing that I'm using React, I can use React component inside a Vue application. Cool. So super shortly, what we saw in this quick demo, how we hooked into the lifecycle of creating the component and passing argument into it, how we isolated the scope via the Shadow DOM, how we integrated different building tools, because we can build the React component with Vite or Webpack and use another bundler on the other side, or non-bundler at all, like we saw. Passing props and event, even if they're not serializable, and of course, cost a platform. What we didn't cover, due to the time limits, SSR, search chunk, dynamic imports, types generating, version control, and automatic event delegation. And as I said before, MyOps support that and more. If you find it interesting or need to use this kind of approaches, you can go and discover our Discord channel, public GitHub repo, or the LinkedIn. And here you have the slides and the code and my personal LinkedIn account. Thank you.